The three-day gathering is hosted by the African Development Bank, the United Nations Development Programme, as well as the UN Commission for Africa. It's held under the theme Securing Africa's Economic Future Amidst Rising Uncertainty. And SABC News reporter Khayelihle Khumalo is there and joins us now for an update. Khaya, a very good afternoon to you. Dumelang, should I say. Let's talk about some of the main goals of the Africa Economic Development Conference, particularly this year.
Well, absolutely, Alicia. A very important time here in Botswana, in Gaborone. As you know that recently this country also had a very smooth transition. There is a new administration. There is a euphoria that is really prevailing almost in every corner in this particular country. But most importantly, really, it's been interesting to hear from the perspective of the delegates who have been lauding Botswana for making sure that it's able really to pass this particular test. But in terms of the issues really that have been dominant, obviously there is a clear realization that Africa must address head-on its challenges in terms of economic growth, in terms of addressing also a myriad of other concerns, especially because you know that there is geopolitical tension in so many parts of the world. For example, we've seen the elections in the US with the return of former President Donald Trump into the White House. So there's quite a lot of questions as to what does that mean for Africa. But apart from that, the structural issues that have always been raised in the African continent, issues around the debt crisis in some countries in the African continent, and subsequently a very clarion call for the international community to rally behind Africa in terms of making sure that we do see those reforms when it comes to the financial architecture, in terms of, for example, the allocation of funds and resources with the likes of the International Monetary Fund. So that has been one of the major talking points as well. But of course, we know that issues also around the health concerns in the African continent as well. We saw with COVID-19, for example, a lot of speakers have been speaking about the state of readiness for Africa to tackle all these issues, Alicia.
Very interesting indeed, Khaya, because this is at the back of COP29, which has been termed or dubbed the Finance COP, largely focused on climate change, particularly with the African team there wanting to emphasize our unique climate change issues that we are facing as a continent. So you've been on the ground following all these proceedings, Khaya, and not just this time around. So from your observation, how does this year's conference differ from previous editions in terms of the focus as well as agenda?
You absolutely spoke about the issue around climate change, Alicia. That has been one of the major issues here. As you know that, for example, when you look at Botswana as a country, when it comes to the desertification, it's one of the major concerns in this country. But also what has always been a concern for the African bloc is the issue around the very far-reaching implications for the African continent. And we know that in terms of the contribution when it comes to the emissions, the continent is really not contributing much, but the impact, the ramifications and the consequences, they've been quite dire for the African continent. So that has been a very interesting issue as well to observe. In fact, Botswana's President Boko said this is not a distant threat, where we're seeing the results of climate change, where there were lakes, where there were rivers, they've dried up now as a result of the climate change. But like you just alluded, I mean, these are very interesting times because also the United Nations Development Programme, which is one of the co-hosts of this particular conference. So one of their leaders spoke about, for example, all these pledges, the promises that are made. You go to so many COPs, whether it's Paris Agreement, Glasgow, so many pledges have been made. But when it comes to the realization of those allocation of resources, it's always really a massive concern because paltry results really can be seen on the ground. But I think there's a sense of understanding that essentially this is a state of emergency in addressing all this cocktail of issues, whether you're looking at the economic issues in the African continent, issues pertaining to the youth bulge, where also the young people are really restless and really yearning for the opportunities. So this is what also has just been raised, Alicia, that one of the main contributors here are very young people, the young researchers, really from time to time, who are not given an opportunity. So I think there's a very clear understanding for this particular gathering to come up with pragmatic solutions to address all these concerns.
All right, Khaya, thank you so much.